Hey guys, Teresa here. Welcome back to my channel, Lost My Thread. Today is the second part of my 10,000 subscriber celebration. I'm going to be doing my Q&A and also revealing the winners of my giveaway. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who left me a question. I feel like it's always a bit of a risk when you want to do a Q&A. You never know if you're going to get enough questions. I definitely got some really fun ones. I'll be putting chapters down below if you want to skip ahead to particular questions. If you are just interested to know if you won the giveaway, have a look at the end of the video where I'll be doing the random prize draw. But personally, I love a Q&A. I love getting to know all of my favorite YouTubers a little bit more, and I hope it's fun to hear a bit about me. I have broken these questions up into different sections. So I'm going to start with the sewing questions because this is at the end of the day a sewing channel. I will then talk about the YouTube related questions and then the personal questions at the end. I have the questions listed down into the side of the camera lens, so if you're wondering why I'm looking there, that is why. The first sewing related question comes from Tiffany. She says, what is your method for choosing patterns to buy? Which considerations are most important to you? E.g. the style of the finished garment, whether you think it will be flattering on your body shape, how easy, difficult it is to sew, etc. So I think in general, probably the biggest element for me is looking at any interesting design features, and specifically anything that I don't feel like I could just easily hack onto another pattern. I own a lot of sewing patterns. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And sometimes if I see something that's come out on a pattern that I think looks really cool, I do consider, oh, could I just adjust a pattern that I've already got to do that? Sometimes it's a design feature that is really, I don't fully understand how they made it. I don't really understand how you would construct that, and I wouldn't be able to necessarily hack it myself, at least without a lot of trial and error. Sometimes it is just really the main feature of that garment, and actually to try and get something I have to that point, it's just going to be so much work. I'm basically drafting my own pattern at that point, and I don't really want the faff. But yeah, generally it's more about something that's in a pattern that I think I really like the look of, that I feel like I don't have a pattern that already does that, and I'd be curious to see how that works for me. I do know that there are, inside there are some subconscious ideas about things that I automatically like or maybe shy away from. And that might be because they're styles or silhouettes or things that I've tried in the past that I feel like I either just don't like the look of on my body, but also maybe I just don't feel like they gel with my style. So I do have in my mind some of those like that I know. So ruffles around the neckline in general, I feel like I don't love. It draws me too much back to my childhood in the 80s where I had a lot of ruffles on my dresses when I was growing up, and it's just not a look that I want to go back to. But I know that there are things even more subconscious in there that I feel like I probably am just not even giving that pattern a second look because of it. But that's what I can say, obviously. As far as like the difficulty level, I definitely don't really care what the difficulty level on a pattern is. I'm somebody who's been sewing for a long old time. I started sewing when I was 16 in 1998. And back then I took Sewing 101 in high school, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I didn't really worry too much about that. If I saw something that I wanted to make, I made it. I have mentioned this on my channel before, but I made my prom dress, which was not really a prom dress per se. It was probably more of like a Renaissance costume, but it was what I wanted to wear to my prom, and I wore it and I felt amazing in it. It had these really long sleeves. I wanted like a slinky, silky long sleeve going all the way to the ground, and there was like a vest section that tied up at the front. But this baby, it had grommets, it had lace overlay, it had boning. I had been sewing for about a year when I decided to make this, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I asked my mom if she thought I could do it because she had sewn. She used to sew our Halloween costumes and things, and take up skirts and trousers. She didn't sew loads, but I asked her, like, do you think I could manage this? Do you think I could sew this? And her attitude was very my mom attitude, love her. And she said to me, well, they give you instructions, just follow the instructions. They wouldn't sell it to you if you couldn't make it. And I do remember asking the woman in the fabric shop when I was trying to even figure out what boning is and where you would find it, which was in the bridal section. What is boning? How do I like measure how much I need? She definitely gave me a look that she was a little surprised that I was going ahead to try and sew with this stuff when I didn't even know what I was doing. I asked her, do you think it's something that I could do, having not done it before? And I think she didn't want to be negative and tell me that I couldn't, but I definitely remember her being a little bit like, well, I mean, I guess you could probably. And the reality is, you know, this was in 1998 when there were not so many resources out there on the internet, and I mostly just figured out what I was doing from trial and error. The reason I say all this, guys, is because whoever you are, if you have a sewing machine and you have something that you really want to make, you can totally make it. I would not let the difficulty rating on a pattern put you off from making something. I think if you're really excited and enthusiastic about making something, you will do it. You will feel more excited and interested to work on it. You'll feel more proud of it when it's finished. So definitely I'll make an easy pattern any day quite happily. I'll see something that says it's more like difficult, you know, advanced or intermediate, and just like, yeah, sure, I'm sure I can figure it out. And eventually I do, even if I make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes because that is how we learn. So I don't expect to make things perfectly first time every time, but I definitely don't worry about that when I'm looking at patterns. Something else I will say is just a factor for me is that I know with my body shape that there are certain pattern companies that are easier or harder for me to fit. So if I've had an experience with a pattern company that their things just don't fit me, I make adjustments and they're still just never quite right, I do tend to shy away from those. There are pattern companies that tend to fit me much more accurately right out of the packet. So of course their patterns are going to appeal to me a little bit more in that way. But I feel like more in general, I am aware that I can adapt and adjust patterns, so I wouldn't get so fussed about that if I really like the style or a really unique design detail. Annette Cowburn asked, what fabric do you enjoy sewing the most and why? I think for me, if I have to just pick one fabric, because of course I love having a variety in my wardrobe, it's gotta be viscose linen. I said it on my channel before, I really do love a viscose linen blend, and I can take more on the viscose end, more on the linen end. I'm happy really either way. I think really what I like about this fabric, it's generally quite pleasant to touch. It has a nice feel on your hand. It's on the whole quite a cooling kind of fabric. It usually behaves itself pretty well because of the linen element. I feel like it takes folds and creases well, it presses well, it gathers really well, often gives you some really nice volume to the gathers. I love wearing this type of fabric as well. I like the combination of the structure and the drape. I feel like it kind of has the best of both worlds for me. And I feel like it's the kind of fabric that the more I buy it, the more I wear it, the more I want in my wardrobe. So that's definitely viscose linen. That's my all-time favorite. All right, and then Shambolic Sewist has a question. I had some follow-up questions. So she said, desert island situation. You can take 5 crafty things with you. What do you pick, supposing your sewing machine's already up and running on solar energy? So I had to clarify, is fabric included or is that one of my 5? What about thread? I don't want to waste a single one of these 5. And so she replied saying, okay, good point. You can have any fabric or yarn, one color and one type only, but indefinitely, and you can have thread to match. That definitely made things a little bit easier. So if I can only have one fabric forever and I'm on a desert island, I'm still going for a viscose linen because that stuff is breathable. I think I'm gonna go for like a coral pink color if I can only have one color because it feels a little fun and tropical. I really love coral pink, and it is a color that I don't always have an easy time pairing with other things in my wardrobe, but it's my whole wardrobe, so it's fine. Everything's gonna be super cohesive. So I would also want to have some type of buttons that would match or at least complement it. So I'm kind of hoping I can say some kind of unlimited button situation rather than picking like one button, but hey, I'll take what I can get. I definitely would want some kind of dressmaking shears because I can use that to cut my stuff out, but I can also use it to trim ends. Remember, we're keeping this as low as possible. I had debated whether or not I wanted to have like zippers, elastic. I've decided to just go with the buttons because if that's my only option and I can only have like so many things, that's what I'm gonna stick with. I had considered having interfacing, but I can use the self fabric for like a non-woven interfacing. I'm not taking an iron, guys, because if I have an iron, I need an ironing board, and also like I can finger press, or I can just lay a load of stuff on top of things and just leave them to press over time. I've got a lot of time, I'm assuming, on this desert island. But yeah, so seam ripper for sure. I've written them down so I don't forget. Seam ripper for sure. So my 5 are the fabric, my coral pink viscose linen fabric, seam ripper, pins, because I do need pins to make gathers. I don't necessarily need them to always put things in, like pin things in place, but it's nice to have them, but especially when you're gathering and this fabric gathers well. Dressmaking shears and matching buttons. I would love to hear what you guys would take on the desert island. Only 5 are allowed. In Agatha's Cottage asked, what is your favorite make that you made for someone else? So I actually have quite a lot of things I've made for someone else, so it's a little bit tricky, but I think the one that I would have to go with is a quilt that I made for my niece. It was a rainbow pixel quilt, that's what I'm calling it. I completely imagined up the design and I made it. I picked out all the colors, drew out on paper, and then pieced together how that pixelated effect would still create that rainbow. I love all the colors. I love all the fabrics on there. I feel like it came out really well. It was definitely a long process making that quilt. It took quite a lot to create it and it was worth it. It was one of those, I feel like it's so nice to be able to give the gift of a quilt to me. It's just like the most lovely, cozy thing. You know, you can just blanket yourself in love. And I feel like it's been really happy for me whenever I see my niece still using it. It's a wonderful quilt and it's my favorite thing, I think, that I made for someone. No Shrinking Violet asked, what is your favorite dress pattern? This one's hard. I really had a hard time with this. I will say there's a lot of dresses that I've made that I absolutely love, but I actually don't repeat dresses that often. I feel like dresses are a thing that I'm more likely to buy a new thing of, like a new pattern for. I see a new dress, I'm like, ooh, I would love to have that in my wardrobe. So I don't have like a one TNT dress that I've made loads of, but I do think there are a couple that stand out to me as ones that I would really like to make more of. One dress that I've made two versions of is the Megan Nielsen Matilda dress. This is a shirt dress. It is a really beautiful shirt dress. It's a somewhat like utilitarian meets feminine style dress, and I really like both those elements on it. Something that's really nice about this dress is it has a lot of seam lines, which means you can play around a lot with different fabric placement. So when I made my plaid linen version, I really love the way I was able to, you know, adjust where the plaid was facing, get quite a different arrangement, have some really more emphasized design elements. This dress is a really beautifully drafted, really well-fitted dress with princess seams at the front and the back. I feel like it gives you a lot of adaptability to get the fit just how you want it. I love the top section is more fitted and then it flares out from the waist, so it's, I think, quite a flattering design for my shape. I really do love this dress. So two versions of that, and I definitely do want to make more. The other one that I feel like is a big firm favorite that I need to mention is the Deer and Doe Maya Sotis dress. So I've actually made two versions of this dress and I've also made a blouse out of it. So the first version of the dress I made was in an Indian block print fabric, which is like my favorite summer dress. Love this dress, wear it loads in the summertime. It's a button up just on the bodice and then it's just like a normal attached skirt underneath it. This, I will say, I sized down a size because this is what everybody else recommended doing, but actually I feel like I struggle to then get it off over the top of my head. Personally, I've got issues with my shoulders and I do sometimes have a hard time with things that are meant to easily pull off. So I wish I'd gone with the intended size, which is what I would do in the future for this. I ended up adding an invisible zip in the side, so I'm able to get it on and off okay, but it's just a little bit more awkward. I added a bottom tier to this as well, which I feel like it tipped it over for me. I really didn't like it as much without that bottom tier, but I really love it as it is. And then the second version I made of this was actually a blouse. I really liked the fit of the bodice. So this is, like I said, it's buttoned down, but there's actually side darts that go from the side seam to the bust, but also the waist darts that go from the bust down to the waist seam. So you get really great shaping in the bust area. There's also darts in the back of the bodice as well. So I feel like overall you get really beautiful fitted silhouette. And for the blouse, I basically I took the darts out of the back and I just extended it down, and I feel like it's a really beautiful blouse. It's in a cotton Dobby fabric and I wear that one a lot. And then the third version, second dress, but third version of this pattern I made was a corduroy version. Absolutely love this one as a winter dress. So this one I decided to go full button down so that I wouldn't have any problems getting this on and off. So I kept with the same size and the same fit. Because this is a stretch corduroy, I actually ended up having to take it in just a tiny bit to make it as fit as I wanted, but I absolutely love this dress. So this dress does not come with a long sleeve like that. I actually did a mashup with another pattern to make a long sleeve on this, but I think between those three versions, they are definitely some of my favorite dresses. There are things about the Matilda that I really love, and I think both of these dresses, they deserve a space in my wardrobe and I intend to make more of them. But this Maya Sotis dress is just a pretty special one for me. And then Chloe Montrose asked, if you could ask a fairy pattern designer to create your perfect sewing pattern, what would it be? Now, funnily enough, I actually knew straight away what the answer to this was going to be because I've been thinking about my autumn sewing plans, and there's something that I really want to bring into my autumn wardrobe that I just do not see around. So I am a big fan of a big statement sleeve. I like a big full gathered sleeve with a like gathered into a cuff. I really like the Norma blouse by Fiber Mood, the Anna Allen Anthea blouse, but I've never seen that style of sleeve on a jumpsuit. Now this could exist and I'm just not aware of it, but I have not seen it. I feel like a lot of jumpsuits that I see don't have as many of those feminine details. When I was putting together my Pinterest board for my ideal dream wardrobe in Me Made May, when I was trying to plan through all that, I'll put a link if you guys haven't seen those videos. I pinned one or two jumpsuits I feel like had that kind of design element that I really wanted, and I feel like actually I think that would be an easy thing just to mash up with another just like button down jumpsuit that I have. So watch this space, autumn sewing plans. I'm doing a pattern mashup to get what I want that I haven't been able to see around, because even if it's not around, doesn't mean you can't get it, guys. Sometimes you just have to make it happen yourself. And then Addie KL was asking, is there a garment or something else sewn you have yet to make that is on your wish to sew eventually, even if you don't have plans for it yet? If so, what is stopping you? Maybe you haven't found the right pattern, the right fabric, or is there a technique you want to learn first, etc. So yes, there is a garment that I feel like has been just in my mind on the back burner for the last, I don't know, maybe 2 years, and that is a denim jacket. Now, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to make a denim jacket because I wasn't entirely sure that I would wear it, but I feel like the more I see them around, the more I feel like actually I think that would be a really useful thing. And I did used to wear denim jackets. I mean, obviously I was wearing them loads in like the 90s when they were very popular. But even I've had more like a denim style jacket made out of like a cotton twill fabric that I used to wear loads. I think what's putting me off, I definitely do know the pattern that I want to make. It's an itch to stitch pattern. I can't remember the name of it. I'll put it up on the screen so you guys can see. That's the pattern that I want to use, and they come with multiple bust cup options. I generally like itch to stitch. The fit is generally pretty good for me. But yeah, it honestly for me at that point now, it comes down to the fabric, but then also what embellishments I might want to do on there. So I'm having a hard time deciding which denim, like color denim I would want to use, like how deep of an indigo I want to go for. I could make an argument for a lighter or for a darker or somewhere in the middle, but also I feel like that's the kind of thing I don't want to buy online. I want to see in person because I want to make sure it's the right color blue that I'm looking for. But then I have been considering whether to do some additional embellishments, whether that is embroidery or possibly a bit of beadwork, which I'm quite excited about the idea of doing, maybe on like the back yoke, possibly on the front yoke as well. But again, that's something I would have to play around with a lot, trying to come to my conclusions about exactly how I would want to embellish it. So it's a combination of finding the right fabric and then deciding on really more of those finishing details. But I think if I saw the right fabric in person, and I don't want to stretch denim, you know, it's like quite specific things I'm looking for, the right weight, the right color. If I saw the right denim, I think I would just go ahead and buy it, and then I would figure out the other details later. But I think it's something I would like to have, and I think it would be a fun project to work on. So hopefully sometime in the not too distant future, probably not within the next 6 months or so, but you never know. And Made by Julia said, I like to sew and I'm very conscious of the environmental footprint of fashion. I'm really not buying things I don't need for a project, and I'm trying my best to recycle and upcycle the things I own and don't want anymore into something new and useful. I'm especially worried and concerned about the world my kids will have to live in and the consequences of consumerism in our society. What are your thoughts on this topic? Now, I think this is a big topic and I could probably talk for hours about this. I will try to be brief. I think all of us really generally should be aware of how our lives are impacting on the world around us, and definitely our craft is no exception. I will say though, by being somebody who sews and makes my own clothes, I feel like at the very least that is having a positive effect. I'm not buying into the world of fast fashion. I'm not buying the clothes that are just really shoddily manufactured that are going to be, you know, destroyed and disintegrated and tear and fall apart within a few years. I take my time to make things that are going to last for a long time. I buy generally natural fibers that I know are going to biodegrade more quickly over time. I also am very much personally into recycling and upcycling. So if you've seen my channel, you would have seen a lot of the videos I do center around that. So in Me Made May, not this past year, but over the previous 2 years, I spent the whole month of May only doing upcycles and refashions. The first time around I did my own Me Mades that I wanted to refashion, and then the second time I looked at any ready-to-wear clothes that were still lingering in my wardrobe and recycled or upcycled those into other things as well. I'm big on scrap busting, so for the So Frugal challenge, I created things only using fabric scraps, and I have a big stack of fabric scraps assigned to specific things I want to do with them. It's not something I will want to do all the time, but it's nice to have those projects there that I can tap into. I also love a fabric swap, so there is one that happens in London. It's been like a yearly thing I've gone for the last 2 years. The great thing about a fabric swap is you can bring in all the fabrics that you have, that you spent the money on, that you don't want to just sit wasting in your wardrobe, but for whatever reason you're just not sewing them up. Maybe you've fallen out of love for them, but if you can then bring them for someone else to have and then take away things that you now fall in love with, it means those things are actually going to fulfill their duty and be made into clothes. I will put links to my So Frugal video and for my Me Made May videos up here and down below if you want to check those videos out and see something a little bit more specific that I would recommend along those lines. I also really love the Check Your Thread podcast, which is very specifically dedicated to talking about sustainability and sewing and how the two relate to each other. It's a little flyby visit of the things that I think that we can all be doing, but I think it is something that we can always also probably be improving in our practice. I hope that answers your question, Julie. And then Erin Sews says, you live in a hypothetical world where no sewing notions are required. Everything just happens, no seam ripping. Is there a sewing tool you'd choose to keep because you enjoy using it? This was a really fun question to think about. So in all honesty, like when I read that, I pretty much had one thing straight away come to mind, and I wanted to just think around, there are other things that and to be honest, there's quite a few things that I really enjoy using, but the one that I decided is like my ultimate one that I really get so much fun from using is my buttonhole chisel. So this is a chisel. You can have it specifically for buttonholes or just like a handyman's chisel, either way. And I use this to open up buttonholes. I will place it on top of a small cutting mat, push down. There's something so satisfying about when it kind of goes chunk, goes through. You can feel it, you can hear it. It's incredibly satisfying, and it gives you the most nice, lovely, neat, straight buttonholes, and you can line it up with the edge of the buttonhole so that you're not going to accidentally cut through the threads at the bottom or top of the buttonhole. I love my buttonhole chisel. Even if I didn't have to use it, I would totally keep using it. Natalie Harris said, I'm from Chicago and was wondering if you have any favorite fabric stores here. So there are some more questions later on about me and where I'm from. I am from Chicago, spoiler, and she was asking because I'm also from there if there are any fabric stores that I would recommend. Now, I gotta be honest, I learned to sew in 1998 when I was in high school, and I moved to the UK in 2003. So I wasn't there for a hugely long time buying fabric, but also since 2003, things have come a long way. There's a lot more online fabric shops. There's probably a lot more in Chicago that I don't even know about. The main place I used to buy fabric in Chicago when I lived there, and even after I moved to the UK, was Hancock Fabrics, which has now closed. It's not around anymore. I lived in Rogers Park, for anyone who is from Chicago, and that's like the north side of the city. There was one up on the north side that I used to go to, but I also used to really love going to Vogue Fabrics in Evanston, which is just a suburb just north of Chicago. And Vogue Fabrics is ginormous, and it has like rooms and rooms and pretty much everything you could ever look for. So that's where I bought like my wedding dress fabric, my prom dress fabric, but also just fabric for all kinds of fun occasions. That has actually moved spaces now, so I know it's still in Evanston, but it's in a different location, more of like a warehouse feel. So I cannot vouch for the new Vogue Fabrics. I will say they have such a mix there. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily like all the highest quality. They have extremely high quality stuff and also some kind of cheap and cheerful stuff. So I would just be conscious when you're going that you need to look and see what it is. But if you want to get a ton of fabric, I would say, or a good variety of fabric, it's definitely a good place to try. There's also a fabric shop that I really, really want to go to that's called The Waist Shed. Apparently there's one in Evanston as well, but there's one in Chicago, which is the one I'd probably go to. It's like near Humboldt Park. And The Waist Shed is where crafters can donate their old crafty items and then get resold on. So they also have, they call them sorting parties, where people can volunteer to come in and help sort out some of the things people have donated, like beads and buttons, into different categories. They have like snacks and drinks. I have to say, if I still lived in Chicago, I would be there like all the time. That would be my whole social life. I would just go to those crafting parties or sorting parties and just sort out all the craft tools. But yeah, they have tons of different crafting tools, not just sewing, but they do also have like fabrics and buttons, haberdashery, you know, threads. I would say that's definitely a place I would love to go to. But honestly, I would love to get suggestions from other Chicagoans. Anyone else who is from Chicago or near Chicago, please let the people know. Put it down in the comments down below. And then on a similar vein, Kate created it, asked, favorite US fabric store worth the shipping. So I think this is thinking, if you're living internationally, what would be worth getting shipped that's good enough to buy from? I don't have a great answer here either. So when I first moved to the UK, I did used to go home and buy my fabrics from either Vogue or Hancock Fabrics, because this was before there were a lot of online fabric stores. Since there have been online fabric stores, I do get fabric shipped to my parents sometimes when I go home to visit. And the one that I really was excited about and wanted to get more from again was Melanated Fabrics, which has sadly closed down, which is really devastating. I will say Blackbird Fabrics is in North America. It's in Canada, but I still kind of count it because they have a deal where they have someone who's able to drive over the border and then US shipping rates within the US. So I would still count that one, and for sure that is my favorite fabric shop that I have shopped from in North America, and I absolutely intend to shop from them again. But this is another one, guys. If you have suggestions of your favorite fabric shops in the US, particularly that would be worth shipping rates for international, tell everyone down in the comments down below. Now that is it for my sewing related questions, so I'm going to move on to the YouTube related questions. I had a couple of people ask the same question, which is what made me start my YouTube channel. So this really, I will say, was a combination of things. So for one, at the time when I started my channel, I was very into the sewing community, learning more about the sewing community. I loved watching sewing YouTube, and I was very into sewing Instagram. So on Instagram, there are hashtags for different sewing patterns. People can have a profile and share their makes. And I was really enjoying sharing my makes, but also sharing as much detail as I could about my makes. But there is a word count on Instagram, and I felt like every single time I was sharing a description of what I made, alterations that I made, my thoughts on the process of making it, I was literally like having to edit down to get the number of words to fit because I had a lot to say. So that was one factor. In 2020, that was the first time I did my 20 for 2020 list. So I made a list of 20 things I wanted to do that year. And one of the things I wanted to do was to sew a different loaf of bread every month. And what I decided to do on my Instagram, because that's where I was sharing about it, is I made a little video for Instagram just to share what was the bread that I'd made that month. Really enjoyed that, and I got so much positive feedback. There were a lot of people saying they really enjoyed watching me, talking about the breads that I made. Felt like I was a natural, told me I should have a YouTube channel. A lot of people were encouraging me to get on over here, specifically making a sewing channel, because they felt like I was very calm and natural and easy to watch. And I thought, you know what? I have a lot to say. I quite enjoy making the videos and editing the videos. I'm just gonna go for it. And if nobody watches my videos, at least I'm having fun doing it. And at least I have an opportunity to say all the things that I want to say. And I'm sure if you watch my videos, you will probably already know that I do have a lot of opinions, and I like to be able to share those opinions. And I feel like I have a unique perspective. There are things that I feel like I've noticed or I've said that I haven't heard other people saying. And so for me, it feels like there's a space for me in this place. So I want to keep going. And then a couple of other people wanted to know where my YouTube name came from. It's also my Instagram handle. And it's not, I mean, it's just a silly sewing pun, basically. I already had a personal Instagram that I was using very sporadically, not a whole lot. And I wanted to have one specifically for sewing because I don't necessarily think all of my family and friends are interested in my sewing. But also I wanted to be able to interact more with the sewing community with an obviously sewing related name. So I was just spitballing ideas with my husband, throwing things around. He threw out the idea of Lost My Thread, which I thought was definitely a bit of a like dad joke pun. Not, I think, the best name, but I thought it made me laugh. I was like, well, if it makes me laugh, that's good enough. I'm Lost My Thread. And I feel like it makes more sense, honestly, as a YouTube channel, because sometimes I do kind of lose my thread and go off on something. but maybe there was a little bit of that going on my Instagram as well. Who's to say? But yes, it was just a random name my husband came up with. We both thought it was a funny one and it stuck. Sarah Richards asked, do you think it is still viable to launch a sewing YouTube channel, or do you think the market is saturated? So I will start just by saying I don't think the market could ever be too overly saturated with sewing channels. Personally, I can never get enough sewing content. Yes, there are days and lots of like weeks and months go by where I don't feel like I'm keeping up, as it were, but I always love to have more options for my sewing content. As you guys will probably know as well, a lot of times people who have sewing YouTube channels just kind of drop off, stop making videos, take a pause for a while. So it's not like there's an infinite, expanding number of channels as far as I can tell anyway. But I think the thing about YouTube just in general is that the whole thing that is unique to your YouTube channel is you. There is nobody else who is exactly like you, who is going to say the same things you are, who's going to have the same perspectives, the same approach, the same personality. So absolutely. I mean, personally, I love finding new sewing YouTube channels. I subscribe to new ones all the time. So I don't feel like I'm over inundated with sewing. I mean, certainly if you look at my feed and all my subscriptions, I have definitely more videos than I would ever have time to watch. But that's fine. That's a nice thing to have like an oversupply, so I can just watch what I feel like I really like. And there are certain people that I just particularly gel with and I will always watch their videos. And there's others that I'll just watch them if they appeal to me from time to time. And it's nice to have that mix in there. There was always room for a new person. Sarah, start that YouTube channel. You're clearly thinking about it. I would love to hear your perspectives. Mountain Accent Sewing said, I would like to hear more about how you came up with your Clash of the Pattern series. I enjoy watching those a lot. So that one I think was really a pretty organic thing, because I, at the time when I did my first Clash of the Pattern series, wanted to make a button-up shirt, and I had previously struggled to have button-up shirts fit me well across the bust and fit the whole rest of my body. I'd either have to make them very big everywhere to fit my bust, or they would be very tight over the bust area. I knew that there were some sewing pattern companies that cater to multiple bust cup sizes, and so there was a potential to make something theoretically fit me better. But I didn't really know how to choose between the multiple ones that I saw out there, and I felt like if I didn't know, there are probably other people that don't know the difference between these, and wouldn't it be interesting to actually go through bit by bit and compare the differences between them? So that is where the whole series started, and I have to say, it didn't start off being my most popular videos. Over time, I feel like it has grown, and I think it does depend a little bit on how popular the patterns are that I'm choosing, probably the style of garment as well, which I totally get. But I feel like those videos, very much like all the videos on my channel, I am someone who lives by the ethos of make the videos that I would want to see. I don't worry about the views. I make the videos that I feel like I would enjoy watching on YouTube, and I know that there will be people like me who have similar opinions who will appreciate them. So I'm definitely glad to hear that you enjoy those videos. They are a lot of work. I spend many hours on those videos. I feel like it's multiple hours every single one. There's a lot of editing that goes on, a lot of planning and kind of breaking down the different elements, but they're super fun. I always look for suggestions if there's style of garments you'd like me to compare. I'll put a link to the playlist down and up here if you guys want to check those out if you're not familiar with the series, but it's a fun one and I always enjoy when I have an idea for a new series for those. And So Sarah Sewed asked, will you be doing Vlogmas this year? It is definitely my intention. So that was in my 24 for 2024 goals, which feels like it's gotta happen, but we also can veer from those goals that we make at the beginning of the year. But yeah, I took a break from Vlogmas last year. I'd done it the 2 previous years, and I wanted to just have a year where I could just chill and enjoy Christmas and not have too much I needed to do. As it happened, I'd had a lot of problems with my hand and my wrist over that period, so I honestly probably wouldn't have been able to hold a camera up in the same way that I was. So it was a good year to take a break. I really do want to do Vlogmas again this year. I have plans. I already booked some things in December. I booked a little bit of time off at the beginning of the month as well to get the ball rolling. So I am excited to share the December, the holiday, the Christmas preparation and crafting and all that fun stuff with you guys in December. Just in case there are any major continuity problems, I will say that I've had to have a lunch break because I was trying to answer this question and it was seeming a little bit cursed. My printer started making weird clicking noises during one attempt, and then my sewing machine extension for quilting fell over at another attempt, and I just needed a break. Now I've got a jasmine mint green tea to help me along, and I'm gonna move on to the personal questions. By far, the most common question people had is what brought me here to the UK. Somebody also asked what state I'm from. That is Illinois. So I'm from Chicago, Illinois, like I said before. Somebody asked if I would ever move back, and somebody also asked how I met my husband. So I would think these things are all pretty interlinked. So the easy answer to what brought me to the UK is my husband. He's from here. I met him online on a band message board. It was a Smashing Pumpkins alternative rock band message board. This was back in 2002, and we met on a philosophy forum of the message board. So anyone who's not familiar with message boards, it's basically a place where back then you could talk to people from all different parts of the world with similar interests, kind of like a baby social media kind of thing. And you had a little profile with a name and a photo. We both had goofy names and goofy photos. All I knew about him was that he was from London. And when we were talking on this message board, we just had some really good conversations, and I felt like he would be somebody that I would like to talk to a little bit more in depth than just the little short little things we could put on the message board. So I asked him if he wanted to exchange emails, which we did, and we were emailing for a good long while, started using AOL Instant Messenger to talk more like live to each other. The more we got to know each other, the more we found that we just had in common, like tons of stuff. So we liked all the same kinds of books, the same kinds of art, the same kind of music. I guess it's not hugely surprising when we met on a band message board, so we were going to have something in common, but it was definitely still pretty uncanny, and it was not something that I had experienced in my life before. It was, I think, quite easy for us to talk because initially there was no intention of any romantic relationship. We just wanted to talk to another person. And for me, honestly, I felt like I could really just open up and be myself because this was a person I was never going to meet anyway. Why not just have some interesting conversations with a stranger? And obviously things did escalate from there. So the main time I feel like things really tipped over was on my 20th birthday. So when we started talking, I was 19. I asked him if he would call me on my 20th birthday as like a little birthday present because I thought it would be fun to actually talk to each other and hear each other's voices. And it was really quite a whole emotional experience talking to him on the phone. It was definitely very surreal. It was very surprisingly relaxed and comfortable, and it felt like talking to an old friend in a way that I was not expecting. And after that, both of us definitely felt something and felt like, okay, this is more than just somebody to talk to. And over time, you know, we talked more on the phone and we decided we needed to meet. So I flew over here to meet him first and spent a week here, which was amazing. He then flew to Chicago to see me. I mean, this is over like series of many months, obviously, and talking in between and sending packages to each other in between and sharing like books that we liked and that kind of thing. And yeah, basically after like a year and a half of talking, we decided that we wanted to actually just be in the same place. And we didn't honestly care that much which country we were in, but at the time it was generally a bit simpler for me to move to the UK than it was for him to move to the US. Also for me to be able to get a job sooner than it would be for him. So that was what we did. So I moved here in 2003 and we got married soon after. That was the intention, we were going to get married, and the rest is history. So that is me here arriving in the UK. It is now obviously quite a few years later. You can do the math. I'm 42 now and we've been married for nearly 21 years and very happy. And as far as whether or not I would move back, I feel like I'm going to come back to that in a later question when I talk a bit more about my work. Carolyn Ward wanted to know, what was your biggest adjustment when you moved from the US to the UK, other than a different measuring system? Now, I don't know if this counts with what you were asking, but one thing that I feel like is still, I would say, an ongoing issue is that my brain with temperature understands Fahrenheit and just really does not understand Celsius. There are certain temperatures that I understand, like 20 is a comfortable temperature, 0 is freezing, it's 32 degrees Fahrenheit, I get it, but I don't really know between 10 and 15. I don't really know when we're getting like below 0 how really cold that is. I think what doesn't help as well is I come from Chicago where we have extremes of weather. The summer gets incredibly hot. The winter gets incredibly cold. And where I live in the UK is very much in the middle. It is rare that it gets my version of really cold or really hot. And so when people are like, oh my God, it's so hot, it's 28 degrees. I'm like, is it? Is it that hot? And I look at the temperature and it's in like, I don't know, lower 80s. Don't quote me on that because seriously guys, I don't really know what these Celsius numbers mean. But point being, I definitely haven't fully taken on the Celsius. The other thing on like a similar vein is the weather difference. So Chicago, where I come from, we get quite a lot of sunshine. like I said, very extreme weather conditions, like super hot, super cold. London is a lot more rainy, it's a lot more cloudy, it's a lot less dramatic in its weather. And I feel like I had a pretty hard time getting used to that. I feel like largely I am used to it now, and my husband jokes like, why do you need like the most awful extremes that you can barely leave the house to feel comfortable? But I just feel like it's nice to experience all the seasons and all the drama and the snow in the winter and like, you know, the sweat in the summer. It's just all a part of the seasons. But I think that is just because obviously of where I was brought up, but that's not clearly going to be like all of the US or all of the UK. That's just like my own individual experience. Similarly, I noticed, and again, this is going back to 2003, things may be a little bit different these days, though I doubt it. Chicago, where I grew up, I feel like it's a pretty friendly city, sometimes too friendly. You get strangers talking to you and you don't really want strangers talking to you all the time. But London, everybody is very like looking straight down on the trains. No one makes eye contact. Nobody smiles. Nobody nods. And I remember when I came to the UK, I just was used to just smiling at people as I passed them on the street, might wave or say hi. And I will say, definitely if you get further out of the city, more into the country, you do get very friendly people in different parts of the UK, but that's more of like a big city, Chicago to London thing. And I am confident that in many parts of the US, people are not always super friendly either. And maybe different in Chicago these days, like I said, but that was definitely a big transition for me. And I felt like everyone just seems kind of cold and I'm just walking around being this friendly, bubbly person. And I think to some degree I've adapted, but I still feel like I'm a little bit more likely to smile, make eye contact, and be a bit more friendly than many people you will see in London. A few people wanted to know about my work. I'm a midwife, and people were asking how I got into it, what it's like, what some of the differences are between being a midwife in the US versus the UK. So I should say I have never been a midwife in the US, so the information I have is definitely limited. What I can say for sure is that in the UK, the majority of care that you would get from a midwife is on the NHS. I am an NHS midwife, which is free for all national healthcare, and in the US, the healthcare is pretty much all private. So that's an obvious difference between the two. But as far as like the day-to-day work, I think it's probably pretty similar, but I think the majority of midwives in the US are more independent. So they're not necessarily working in a hospital or even alongside a hospital. They're more likely to be supporting women to have their babies at home with home birth. Whereas in the UK, pretty much everyone who has a baby will have a lot of midwifery involvement. So whether you're having private care with a private obstetric consultant, OBGYN, or whether you're within the NHS, and the midwives will be doing most of the care and the doctors basically come in for any complications or extra things that you might need support with if there's concerns with you or the baby. So the day-to-day of my job, I work as a community midwife, which means I work out in a small GP surgery out in the community that my area covers. I see women for their pregnancy appointments, so they come and see me for antenatal or prenatal care. We do full checks of them. We also are on call for home birth, so I don't currently work in the hospital. I have worked in the hospital, done all the lovely shift work, but I would prefer to do my more like reasonable hours that suit my body better. But we go on call for home birth, so I would very periodically be called out to help deliver a baby at home, which is a true joy in my job. And then I also do postnatal home care. So in the UK, the day after you leave the hospital, a midwife will come to visit you, check everything's going well. We have like routine times we go and see the mums and babies, and then we discharge usually when the baby's kind of 2 weeks to a month old. We say goodbye and somebody else within the healthcare service, a health visitor, will take over. So that's kind of like the brief day to day. I really do enjoy the job. The way I got into it was when I came to the UK, I needed a job. When I'd been in Chicago, I had been working as a florist, really fun job. Couldn't find a good job like that here in the UK. I ended up applying for a job as a healthcare assistant. So basically I was working in a hospital assisting the doctors and the nurses, and I got a lot of encouragement to go forward in that and actually do my nursing. So I did my RGN training, adult nurse training, and in the process of that, when I was a student nurse, I spent some time with the midwives, and I saw baby being born by cesarean, baby being born vaginally, 2 babies born vaginally. I saw midwives doing their antenatal checks, their postnatal checks, and I felt like my mind was blown. I was so amazed. Being in the room when a baby is born is just incredible. There is such an amazing feeling in the room. when I was seeing the midwives feel these women's tummies and like, oh yeah, the baby's back's here, the baby's legs are here, I was like, how can you figure this out? It's incredible. There's so much about the job that I was just completely amazed by. I didn't know much about midwifery before I went into it, but when I saw it, I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. So I did finish my nurse training and I worked as an adult nurse for, I feel like it was 2 years, a year and a half, along those lines. And then I trained to be a midwife. So I knew that was what I wanted to do. Did all the stuff that I needed to do to get there, and I genuinely do really, really love my job. And my favorite part of my job is when I get to see families like coming back and I see them again. I've got one woman who has had, now she's having her 4th baby with us, and I know her really well, and it just feels amazing to be able to watch people's families grow, to see such a positive time in people's lives, mostly positive. And I definitely encourage you guys, if you're curious about it, look into it, go for it. There are highs and lows, ups and downs, but on the whole, it's honestly a really rewarding and really wonderful job. Now, this is where I feel like I want to answer the question about whether or not I would move back to the US. So initially when I moved here, the idea was I was going to live here for 2 years, and my husband was then, we were going to go together to the US for 2 years, and then we decide, okay, where do we want to actually settle? But when I got to the end of the 2 years, that was when I was being encouraged to do my nurse training, and I felt like, oh, well, this is a good opportunity, and I can always be a nurse back home. I'll go ahead and do it. Then when I got into midwifery, I feel like things kind of shifted. So for one, I'd been here for quite a few more years. I was, putting my roots down. I felt like I was getting close to my husband's family. So as much as I'm missing my own family back home, I was now going to be missing his family if we went back the other way. But more importantly, I felt like midwifery was just so different then. I feel like there are more midwives in the US that are working alongside hospitals or in hospitals now than there was back then. But in general, it is quite a different job. And I think I would struggle to be doing the same job in a very different way. I feel like the US things are a bit more medicalized on the whole than they are in the UK with maternity care, with pregnancy care. I'm making big generalizations. I'm sure it's not the case across the board, but I feel like it would be a harder transition now. I'm also aware that as time goes on, so many of the people that I knew, my friends, my family in Chicago have been moving away. Places that I loved have been closing down. Like, it would be a very different city to move back to. I love Chicago, and honestly, if I was going to move to the US, that is where I would go. That is where my heart is, definitely. I'm a Chicagoan, I'm an American, like that is where I feel the most at home. But in many ways, there's so much I really now like about the UK. I generally feel like I would struggle with the idea of people paying for healthcare. I feel like I would struggle with a lot of the political craziness that goes on over there. I just feel like in general, I'm pretty happy, and I don't see any reason to go anywhere now. But I also know never say never. That's something I've learned in life. You never know what life is going to throw at you and what might happen. And one day it could be the right choice. Sarah Middle was asking if I've visited many other places in the UK and which are my favorites. So for sure I have traveled a bit around the UK, not as much as I would like to, but there's always more places you could go to. I think as far as favorites, probably my number one I would have to go with is Cornwall. Cornwall is beautiful. It is absolutely breathtaking. There's an incredible ruggedness to it. It is very pretty and quaint, but also incredibly dramatic and breathtaking. I love the vibe. There's just a very relaxed feel. People are really friendly. Really do love Cornwall. Highly recommend going there if you're visiting the UK. I know people who, when they come to visit from other places, tend to stay in the big cities, which are great and they have their charm, but I really do love Cornwall. I also really love Brighton down on the south coast. It's a really cool city full of some really interesting and eclectic people and shops. Definitely quite an artsy community down there. And then further up north, I do love the Lake District. I've been up there once, maybe twice. Do want to go back and explore a lot more. What a wonderful place for long country walks. Really, again, incredible scenery and such a calm and relaxing atmosphere. Annette Cowburn also wanted to know what is my favorite music genre. Now, I do have quite an eclectic taste in music. I like a lot, so it's hard to pick a favorite, but if I do want to say one type of music that I listen to more often than not, it's got to be alternative music. And that could be alternative rock or more like alternative pop, weird electronic stuff. I really love Bjork. I'm a big fan of Beck. Smashing Pumpkins, Radiohead, those are probably like up there as some of my top artists. I also love Bob Dylan, Paul Simon. I love jazz, Herbie Hancock, Miles Davis, and vocal jazz, Blossom Dearie, Ella Fitzgerald. Heavier rock bands like Black Sabbath, Metallica. Old 90s hip hop music I absolutely love, Tribe Called Quest, Black Star, I love Erykah Badu. And like, who doesn't love the Beatles and Motown? Like, I feel like there's just too many things, but alternative is the one that I reach for the most, so that's what I gotta go for. Laura Martini was asking, what is your favorite lingerie brand and why? And I think I don't really have a favorite lingerie brand, but I will say the one shop that I like the best in the UK is Bravissimo. They specifically specialize in larger bust cup sizes. They're really good for fitting you there and helping you to get a really good fit with different styles and different shapes of bra. So I do recommend going there if you have a fuller bust and you want to check out some different styles. Kimberly Lou was asking, what's your least favorite color and is it the same as your least favorite color to wear? I think my least favorite color just in general, just to look at as a color, is probably beige. I just find beige pretty boring and blah. But if I'm gonna be more broad, I think brown just in general is not my favorite color to look at. But that's not the same as far as wearing. I think the color that is my least favorite to wear would be yellow. I do have like a certain mustard yellow that I feel like works well with my coloring, but most yellows I feel like just look terrible on me. I look ill when I'm wearing them. So broadly, I think yellow is the least common color in my wardrobe, and I think it's probably my least favorite color to wear just in general. A few other people wanted to understand a little bit about how my sewing fits into the rest of my schedule. How do I find the time to sew, especially because I do work full time? And I will say there's kind of like now, and then also I'll mention where things were about 2 years ago, which is what I was doing for quite a few years. I work full time. Like I said, I work out in the community, so I don't really do the long day and night shifts. When I was doing the long shifts, you get long days. We'd work 12.5-hour days, and we'd have a lot of days off in the week to make up for those long days. So that was pretty easy. When I moved over to more like officey hours, we do cover 7 days a week, so it's not always Monday to Friday, but I was working 9 to 5 for a number of years. And what started to happen is just naturally I started to wake up quite early in the morning, and I would find that I was awake at like 5 o'clock, but I didn't need to leave the house until like 7:30 or so. So I had a long period of time. Obviously at some point I'd have a shower and breakfast, but I usually had a bit of time that I could sneak in a little bit of sewing before work. And that worked really well for me. Occasionally I would sew at the weekends as well if I didn't have plans. I like to spend most of my weekend time with my husband, but occasionally we would do a few things independently as well. I recently shifted my hours. So I live about, well, over an hour, close to an hour and a half from work as far as my commute either end, which is significant. And I changed my hours so that instead of doing 8-hour shifts 5 days a week, I do 10-hour shifts 4 days a week. So it's the same amount of hours, but it's compressed over the 4 days. So I have to go in earlier and I finish later, but I get one more day off in the week, which for me is huge. I still have a long commute, but I'm doing it less often. So overall, I'm gaining a lot more time by not having the long commute that extra day. And it feels like a day where I can really just do my thing. So that's most commonly when I'll sew. I'll do YouTube videos. I will also spend some time with my husband, but I will say that's my like top creative day, is my extra day off in the week. And then again, I will occasionally, if I still wake up early before I need to even go to work, which does still happen, guys. I've become like an earlier and earlier bird as I've gotten older. I will often do a little bit of sewing early in the morning. Rare that I would do later in the day, because by the time I get in from work, it's often like 7:30. I have to cook dinner and then pretty much go to bed because I'm wiped. But days off on the weekends as well, if I've got a couple of days off together, I will quite often sneak in a little bit of sewing here and there. I think the main thing with it is if you prioritize it, you will do it. But we all have a lot of things in our life that our creativity and our sewing may not be the priority. There was a Me Made May where I decided I was going to make a point that I was going to do some sewing, at least I think it was 15 or 20 minutes every single day. And sometimes that meant that I would be sewing while the dinner was simmering, for example, and just do a little bit and just get a few steps done. So definitely you can add little things in those ways, but it did feel a little bit hectic and chaotic to be multitasking at that level. For me, the biggest thing, honestly, is just waking up early. If you wake up an hour earlier, half an hour earlier than you need to get up to do whatever you're doing, go to your work day, that is a little bit of time that you can put towards sewing. I appreciate not everyone's going to want to get up early in the morning. And I tell you, if you were going to ask me 10 years ago, was I going to be waking up at 5 in the morning to do some sewing? I would say forget about it. But my body clock has naturally started doing that. So I'm going with it and it works well for me. I think the main thing with sewing and any kind of creative act that we're doing for ourselves is to just not put pressure on it. It may be that you're at a stage of your life where you just do not have a ton of time to commit to your craft. And that's fine. Like I said, we all have to balance our priorities in life. If you have kids, if you have other commitments, this may not be the number one thing that you're doing. But for myself, I've been able to chip away a little time here and there. My husband is incredibly supportive of my creativity and wants me to make my videos, to do my sewing, and that has really made a big difference as well. So that is it for my questions. I'm now going to move on to the giveaway portion of the video, which is very exciting. I have 5 prizes to give away to you guys. I did say in the previous video, but if you are a winner, you have 2 weeks from the day this video goes out to contact me to claim your prize by emailing me on this email address, which is also down in the description box, so that way I can give you the prize. If you do not contact me within 2 weeks, I will be pulling additional prize winners because I just don't want these to go to waste. So I'm gonna go through and randomly select one of the comments for my first prize, which is the Cashmerette prize. The Cashmerette prize is 3 months subscription to the Cashmerette Club, where you get 3 sewing patterns from Cashmerette. You will also get access to all of the old fit videos from Jenny. You will also get access to all of the live group sessions. And I forgot to mention before, you also get 3 months of the My Body Model Plus, which means you can make a custom croquis that looks exactly like you so that you can sketch your ideas down. The winner for that prize is 0110. So congratulations on winning this prize. Please do contact me to claim it. I also have 2 free PDF patterns to give away from Closet Core Patterns, so you can choose any PDF that you want. And the first winner for that prize is Dazzy S4618. The second winner is Joe Makes. And then I have 2 Helen's Closet patterns to give away. The first winner is The French Seams. Congratulations, Rachel. She's one I know. I swear this was random. And Adele Bull 7175. I am so glad that I'm able to share some of my favorite pattern companies with you guys. I hope you absolutely love what you get. As I said, please do send me an email down on the email address that's here and down in the description box to be able to claim your prize. I would love to hear what you decide to get with your prize as well. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. I know this was a longer one, but hopefully it was fun to get to know a little bit more about me. I would love to know a bit more about you guys as well, so please do feel free to answer some of these questions down in the comments. I think there were some really fun ones out there. Congratulations again to the giveaway winners. Please do give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video today. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. I will see you guys again very soon. Bye!